What's the worst thing you've had or seen done by someone who was supposed to be a professional? My girlfriend at the time was unhappy with the appearance of her teeth, and rather than go with orthodontics, which my very professional dentist had recommended, opted to go with the instant solution of crowns and veneers, nearly a dozen in all, suggested by a dentist at some random strip mall. Doing this work required she get 6 root canals. Her first appointment for the work was a Friday at about 2 p.m. They worked on her for 3 hours, and when it was 5 p.m. and it was quitting time, they stopped work, put a temporary bridge on her and said they'd see her in 2 weeks, when her next appointment was scheduled, and sent her home. Once the lidocaine wore off, she was in agonizing pain. By Sunday she literally asked me to kill her. Calls to the dentist's service went unreturned. Monday morning she called and was told the pain was normal and they wouldn't see her earlier. That afternoon I called my dentist, explained the situation and brought her in immediately. He gave her some lidocaine which provided instant relief, and then took the temporary bridge off. Next he said out loud holy crap and told his assistant to get the camera, and took about 50 pictures. He left and went into his office, and then came back, put the temp back on, gave her a script for Percocet, and told us to call her dentist again and make an appointment. We did, and it was scheduled for 7 a.m. the next morning. Apparently they had started 6 root canals on Friday, but not completed any of them. Just opened the tooth and exposed the nerve, but not actually destroyed it, and left the tooth open with a minimal packing but no actual filling, and expected my girlfriend to live with that for 2 weeks with no pain meds. I talked with my dentist about it on a later date, and according to him this was about the single most painful thing a dentist could do to a person, and had they not taken the appointment the next morning he was going to hand the pics over to the state's ethics review board. Had a gynecologist cough straight into my vag, didn't cover her mouth, didn't turn away, just spread my legs and coughed. Had a gynecologist tell me I was a S for having an IUD and that's why I was having unrelated health issues. He retired several months later, so I'm hoping he was just going senile and wasn't actually that mean. Girlfriend's parents saved money on their room addition by hiring a handyman to install the bathroom fixtures instead of a plumber. He mixed up the hot and cold pipes. It's really odd to sit on a toilet full of hot water, feeling the steam rise on your ass. Sounds like it would be strangely luxurious in winter. I had a teacher in college that took points off my essay for misspelling ludicrous. She didn't know it was a real word and thought I was referring to a pop artist. Had a professor lose my final. When I emailed him about why I was failing, he said, well, you should have been there for the test. After trying to convince him I was and him not believing me, I showed up to his office and demanded he allowed me to go through the scantrons. He threw the pile at me and rolled his eyes, thinking I was using this as a last resort. Nope. Almost 1,200 scantrons later I pulled mine out and put it on his desk. I made him run it through the machine as I watched. A doctor once prescribed me beta blockers to treat anxiety. On my follow-up appointment I asked him about one of the side effects. He asked me what drug I was on. I explained it was the one he had prescribed the week before and told him the name of it. Dude proceeds to open a book of prescription drug information and then tell me I probably shouldn't be taking it because it could be dangerous. I haven't been back. I had wrecked my mountain bike on a South Mountain trail and ripped open my arm pretty good. I also broke 2 rims, cracked my helmet, and blew out my front shock. I was in and out of consciousnesses on the road to urgent care. Because it was early Sunday morning, the first 2 places we went to were closed and we ended up at a little clinic. This young doctor, 3 years out of med school, cleaned my wound, pulled all the rock and dirt out of my skin, and then stitched up the large flap of skin that was torn back. He gave me 2 pain pills and told me to have a good day. Well, apparently you are not supposed to stitch wounds up like that and are supposed to let them drain breath. I went in 2 days later to get more pain pills because my arm hurt so bad it was keeping me up at night. The doctor on staff told me I had to be admitted to a hospital within an hour immediately because my whole arm was infected and it was starting to reach my lungs. I had a massive infection that ended up hospitalizing me for days, and then I had to have a surgery where they removed a good part of my forearm tissue to let it all regrow. I spent more than a month packing and cleaning out a dollar-sized wound as my tissue regrew. Worst experience of my life. There are always people graduating at the bottom of the class. Professional roofer didn't seal the roof off properly at the end of the day. It rained hard that night. My parents' attic filled with water. Babysitter dropped my little brother, breaking both of his arms. Even worse, she made him stop crying and just covered him with a ton of blankets. When my parents got home, she just took the money and left without a word. My parents didn't find out until later, when my brother just kept quietly sobbing but couldn't move his arms. A sign language interpreter was working in a classroom. She had only one deaf customer, so instead of doing her work, conveying the message between spoken and signed language, she flirted the entire time with a guy who was sitting next to the deaf student. Oh yeah, I had that happen in one of my college classes. But in my case, the guy was also deaf, and he didn't care about the class because it wasn't a requirement for his major. So the interpreter he flirted via sign for a few classes until I complained because I was getting too far behind on the coursework trying to lip read the teacher. The next week we had a new interp. Guy was not happy. I saw a cop hold a suspect at gunpoint while holding his gun sideways like a wannabe gangster. My wife went to a professional conference out of town when she was 7 months pregnant with our first child. It was about a 4-hour drive from home and she was a little concerned, so she asked me to go with her. She didn't consult with her OBGYN. While we were there, her water broke. We went to the local hospital and they said she was going to be bedridden for the next several weeks. So unless we wanted to stay there, we should get in the car and drive like heck back to our hometown. When we got home we went directly to the hospital and they admitted her. They kept her in a bed with her feet higher than her head and checked her several times a day for infections. Her OBGYN was nowhere to be found. My wife was an RN at the same hospital where she was staying. Her friends, other RNs, would come by and chat with her frequently. They let her know that the OBGYN was mad at her for leaving town without telling him and bitching to everyone in the hospital about her. After she'd been there for a couple weeks, the OBGYN showed up. I was in the room, along with several of her friends. He smelled strongly of alcohol. He walked up to the bed without saying anything while pulling on a glove. He pulled up her gown and jammed his hand in while everyone was standing there. He then made a few incomprehensible sounds and stormed out. We didn't see him again for a couple weeks. The tests for infection finally came back positive, so they were going to induce labor. Her OBGYN showed up and even though the staff doctors said she could deliver normally, her doctor insisted she needed a cesarean section. My wife was really disappointed, but we went along with what he said. We later found out he wanted her to have a cesarean because he had a tea time that afternoon and didn't want to miss it. When I was a teenager I ended up having to have my first root canal at a new dentist because my father had switched insurance plans. Everything started out normal, but after about an hour into the procedure the dentist told me that she needed to step out for a moment. At that moment, I still had one of those metal filing toothpicks stuck up into my tooth, so she told me not to close my mouth. I sat there and kept it open for over a freaking hour. Apparently she had gone off to do a procedure on another patient because my root canal had run over the time she had allotted for it. Surprise, surprise. My tooth had somehow become infected in this time and I had to wear a temporary crown for a week and not eat anything that wasn't room temperature while I took antibiotics. When I finally got the permanent crown, it ended up being the brightest shade of white that they had. I still haven't been able to get my other teeth to match it without professional whitening. An electrician touching exposed wiring to see if it was on. I should also mention that he had only 3 fingers left on that hand. My husband worked with a cook that was nasty, looked dirty, drank during work hours and ate all the jamon iberico, 50-60 euro kg. He claimed to have owned the restaurant before. One day my husband went into the kitchen just in time to stop this guy pressing the start button on the microwave with a huge metal tray inside. When my husband started yelling at him, the guy asked how was he supposed to know you can't put metal inside a microwave oven. Just because they owned the restaurant doesn't mean it was successful or good. One of my history teachers in high school was a complete douche. He looked like the villain in Air Bud. Red hair, Charlie Brown bulb of hair in the front with a mustache. He had done things like try to rip my papers apart when I stapled the wrong two together, ripped one in half and made me tape it back together. Completely hated the guy. One day he brought his daughter to school and she wasn't acting the way he wanted. He locked her ass in the closet in the classroom. The entire school heard about it. I was taking courses via distance in order to complete my university degree. One particular class was an economics class. The professor that semester was filling in for the regular prof and had never taught via distance before and was using the regular prof's materials. But no big deal, it's really not that hard. So midterms roll around. We write the multiple choice midterm and our proctors mail it back in. Being as there are people across the country, and often in other countries, taking the course, the tests take a while to come back and be graded. So one day we log into the online courseware and see that our grades are posted, along with a very long and ranty email from the professor. The entire class failed the midterm. She insisted that she double and triple check the answer key, and it was right, and that she never had such a thing happen before. She also admonished us for not studying hard enough and that we really had to work to pass the final. As you can imagine, there was nothing but uproar amongst the class. No one could believe that not even one person didn't pass the midterm. So we waited for the midterms to be returned to us. Along the way she decided to compromise and offer us a very fair final. Double all midterm marks so they were where they should be and use the better mark between the two for the course grade, as long as the final was passed. Now, it's 3 weeks before the final, and everyone is flipping the frick out to ensure we completely understand the material. Online study groups are created. Questions and discussions abound. Then midterms began arriving back at students' homes. We began posting questions about the answers. Why was X wrong for questioner? The professor gave very lengthy and detailed answers for the first few that had been posted. We were confused. The answers she had given us were to questions that weren't on our midterms. The professor went silent after berating us for being idiots and insisting it wasn't her fault. The professor profusely apologized for inadvertently correcting all the exams using the answer key for a different version of the exam. Best clusterfuck ever. Let me start by saying I've had a peanut nut allergy since infancy. When I was in preschool there was a day that they were serving PB&J sandwiches. Me being the smart little squeaker I called attention to the fact that I can't eat the PB&J because I'm allergic to peanuts. One of the teachers came over to me, grabbed my sandwich, opened it up, and wiped the side with mostly peanut butter against the edge of a table and put it back together and gave it to me. I gave her a dead confused and repulsed stare, followed by a courteous, "Can I have something else please?" The girl then fetched me broccoli and cheddar soup, I think, and I ate that instead with pride. Later, of course, I told my mother, who rose all of heck. Electrician who claimed he could do network cabling added 3 network points the same way you'd added power sockets, by running a spur from one existing network point. The result, 4 network points in the office. Perfect in every way except that you could only use one at a time. When I was 6 I was sent to a therapist for ADHD. He decided to give me 11 different medications over the course of a few months. They made me appear to be completely insane. My behavior became strange and violent. My parents eventually made me a day patient at the local asylum because they caught me talking to things that weren't there. Thankfully the therapist there got me off the cocktail and told my parents to sue the original therapist. I still remember the nightmares, hallucinations that would blend together. When I was a teen, I went to the ER because I had been bit by a cat. The doctor told me I should take antibiotics and asked me what kind I wanted. To clarify, I'm not a doctor nor was I one at age 13. That's our agent who, after x-raying my rifle case, looked at me and threw it across the room. I don't think anyone here characterizes SAR agents as professionals. My co-worker doesn't know how to transfer calls. She just tells people to hang up and call us again and ask the receptionist for someone else. I have a co-worker that does that too, but he looks, on the transfer sheet, to tell them what extension to dial when they call back. I guess that transfer button that is right there on the phone isn't big enough for him. In 4th grade, I hurt my ankle during recess and told my teacher I thought it was broken. I mean, my ankle had swelled to the size of an orange. Of course, the teacher dismissed me and had me go to the nurse, who said it was just a little sprain. I walked home that day, 8 blocks, with a shattered ankle. When I got home I showed my mom, went to the ER, and had to wear a cast for 8 weeks. I was subbing for a teacher's aide one time, and she kept pronouncing the word chameleon. The word was chameleon. My health teacher would pronounce groin as groin, and when we corrected her she just stared over her glasses and said, "Well, that's how it's spelled." I applied for an apartment at a nice apartment complex in my town, and several months later I got a phone call about a maxed out credit card I didn't own. As it turns out, the guy who processes credit checks was opening credit cards with the info on rental applications and maxing them out. He was genuinely surprised when he got caught. He had over 50 stolen cards when they arrested him, according to the arresting officer. I've seen a consultant neurologist attempt to bamboozle a newly diagnosed patient onto a drug trial which had leukemia side effects, including several deaths on his previous trial, with the sage words, "Yeah, but they can cure that now." Also thrown into this was a load of used car sales techniques, including writing down remission rates on a piece of paper, then dramatically crossing them out and writing 100% in giant text. I suspected he was going to throw in free rims. When working in a salon, this one girl would burn women on purpose with a curling iron if they annoyed her. She didn't last long. Went to the doctor's office to pick up my blood test results. Doctor came into the room shaking his head saying, "Wow, this is not good. Not good at all." I started to panic. He then alerted me about how some baseball player got hurt and his team was doomed. I never thought a doctor would do something like that. I roll. But for that 30-second span I was convinced I was a dead man walking. Also never went back to that doc again. One time the people who installed our toilet sealed the lid shut. We had to buy an entire new toilet. Mid-1990s Texas. My cousin and I grew up as poor hicks. She had a coupon for a JCPenney haircut, but the nearest store was an hour away in Texarkana, Texas. My poor cousin and I drove an hour and a half for her to get the most fricked up version of a Jennifer Aniston shag. The hairstylist did the entire style pretty much one-handed, since her other hand was preoccupied with eating a large batch of homemade fried chicken drumsticks out of a giant Tupperware container. She ate the entire 30 minutes it took to cut her hair. Not KFC or delicious Popeyes, her own stash. The hairstylist motioned as often with the scissors as she did with the drumstick and kept poking my cousin's scalp with the greasy end of the chicken. She sat there and cried, both of us too timid to say anything, while the stylist continued gesticulating wildly with poultry products. My little brother's pediatric dentist pulled a tooth without any kind of anesthetic at all. You have been visited by the water papa. You will be blessed with sunny beach days, but only if you comment "swim safe, papa." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.